Welcome back. We're going to be looking at a couple of my personal Peavey amps today. I've got a VTM60 that's had some modifications done to it, I think. Bought this for relatively cheap. I wanted one of these for years, was looking for something to replace my JCM 800 2204 since the prices on those have shot up so much, and this was a top contender. Just need some general service and mods undone though. I don't know what's up with this knob. I think I opened this up when I first got it and it looked like that wasn't even connected to anything, so probably we'll just remove it. And then also have my well-loved, well-used 5150 signature edition that's missing the front grille, because why not? That I bought off a buddy years ago, kind of service of an amp that doesn't necessarily have a direct problem other than letting some noise through, some hum, but you have some time or extra cash to throw at getting it show ready. So I'll open these up one at a time. I'll try to keep things pretty short and have this just be a quick reference point for that service on an amp. And then also kind of just a general look at a couple more Peavey amps, because why not? Really like the Peaveys from this era. Probably will hold on to both these for a very long time. So let's get them up and running. Just realized I've never shown you guys how to actually take the chassis out of one of these amps. So I'm going to talk you through the process. I'm not actually going to do it because it'd be hard to do while holding the camera. But on this amp, we're going to take off these 4 screws holding the back grill plate in place. And then on this era of Peavey, the 4 screws holding on the rubber feet will then tie down the chassis. And it's easier to do things when the amp is vertical like this, because then what you can do is grab underneath one of the transformers and then lift the chassis up and pull it out. Sometimes things will get stuck because of the corners from the feet or the Tolex, but just be conscious of that and you should be okay. And I like to do this on the ground. I've got it on my bench to show you, but when it's on the ground, it's a little bit easier on your back, because some of these can be a little heavy or have the weight not centered, so it'll want to tilt around a little bit. But just heads up, that's how we usually take the chassis out on most amps. So we are now looking at the inside of our 5150 amp. Got it on the bench here. And you can see it's actually been long enough since I played this that I stole a 12AX7 from this amp for something else in a pinch one day before I was stocking more tubes on hand. Not a lot of surprises in here, and really probably could have done this parts order without opening it up, but always seems like a good excuse. I don't know what it is with Peaveys. People love writing in the chassis. Yeah, what does that even say? It looks maybe upside down from where we're at. Yeah, well, whatever. So I'm going to preemptively, this thing had some pretty bad hum last time I played it. I was using it for some shows, so we're going to just preemptively, even though none have catastrophically failed, replace all the electrolytics. And the one reason I did want to open this up was just to, although this would have been on the layout, I wanted to confirm which were radial capacitors like these versus axial caps like these. So I'm going to go through and just make a list. You can see on like this guy, this big one here is a 330 microfarad, 400 volts. Okay, so the microfarads is what you always want to keep the same whenever possible or close. And keeping in mind that's a 20% tolerance on most caps, even new. But the voltage is very important. We never want to go below that voltage. And sometimes on amps, I don't want to point any fingers, but modern Fenders maybe, they will put in caps that are underrated from the actual voltage it's going to see. So we're going to replace all 3 of these. these IC caps. I'm just going to make a list of those for now and then jump over to the internet to place an order. And I'm marking down the voltage, the capacitance, how many I need, as well as a general estimate of the footprint or the size, and whether it's a radial, meaning the two legs are coming down from the bottom, or an axial, meaning the legs are on an axis with the cap for each of those. These small guys are much less likely to fail, but maybe we'll just go ahead and replace those as well since we're getting in here. And because this is my own amp, and yeah, not needed in a customer amp necessarily unless someone really requests it, but why not? So that's about it for this guy. I'm going to mark that stuff down and then we'll move over to the VTM60. The 5150 is back in its enclosure awaiting parts. I wanted to show you the slight differences on getting the VTM60 apart. So we're going to still remove the back panel. There's a couple screws here. Once that is out, instead of going for the feet underneath, on the side of each side has two screws from the front of the amp that are holding the chassis in. So we're going to remove these two, then the two on the other side, and then we'll be able to pull the chassis out in a similar way. VTM60 is now on the bench, and I'm noticing something other than this obvious mod here, which is this. I do not believe these amps had a choke initially. I know that's a common mod on these. I bought this a few years ago, opened it up just to make sure things were safe, saw that it was going to need some work, plugged it in a couple times. That was about it, but I think I missed this at the time. So let's see what's going on the other side. So we can start off by seeing, this was the one thing I remembered, was this modification is not hooked up to anything. Just floating there. This switch on the front, however, seems to go over to bypass one of the gain stages. So that's like some sort of all out or bypassing maybe a capacitor or resistor that's on the other side of the board there. But here's the big thing. Again, what the heck, guys? Why are we writing in Peaveys all the time? And also, if you're going to brag about having been here, maybe you should do some better work. I don't mean to be too judgmental, but that is a whole lot of hot glue, and look at this. This capacitor, which is in the power section, those legs are nearly touching. Let's see if we can get this out of the way. That's not good. So, looks like there's a variable bias added as well, or I shouldn't say that, a adjustable fixed bias added. Variable bias is different than a fixed bias, meaning that it varies with the signal going into the tube, whereas this and other amps that have, even when they have an adjustable setting like that, are still a fixed bias typically, depending on the arrangement. Looks like these have been changed out to be moved to the other side of the board. Something's going on here. So this one's going to take a little more digging, but I am going to redo these filter caps. I'm going to rebuild this power board. I do not like what I'm seeing here, especially for an amp that I'm hoping to use a bunch. Going to get this back to stock. Something's obviously been done, or maybe not. That might be stock, actually. I'm going to try to get this off there. I think I can just use some acetone. Samuel Jackson, stick to the movies, I guess. Big fan, but not a fan of this amp work. Yeah, I might actually pull these boards and get a closer look at what's going on. I'm going to have to compare to the layout and see what we're going to need to order to get this thing back to a stock condition. May as well just leave the choke in place, but the rest of it will probably just go back to stock. Okay, oh, what's this? Do we have a... Oh no, that's our hum balance. Okay, so that pot should be there. This one is the hum balance for the tubes. Okay, so I'll take a closer look and then give you a further update here. And the more I look into this amp, the more I'm not really happy with this work. These capacitors are all the correct value, so that's good, I guess. We're going to replace those all with FNTs or something comparable. Maybe mod caps for any values they may not have. This wire coming off the... Is that coming from the transformer? Or let's see, that's going to one of our... Oh, good, to one of our outputs. Is just kind of like taped together instead of correctly soldered and heat shrinked to our main board, our main preamp board there. Yeah, that's fun. These 470 ohm resistors for the screen resistors should be 100 ohms. That's, you know, there's some people like to argue that a higher value there will help protect the amp more, but really that's more of like a grid stopper thing. To change the value of those screens is really just changing the voltage at the screen nodes on the power tubes, which is going to slightly affect the characteristic of the amp. I'd rather have the stock values in there, so I'm going to do that. I think I am going to pull each of these boards individually just to see if there is any other weird stuff going on in here that I need to order parts for, and we'll give you an update if that's the case. Okay, so to pull this main preamp board here, basically pull off all these connectors. These are one of the cool things about these Peavey amps is everything is very intuitive. This can't reach over here, and there are different pins. Some amps, that's not the case. And then we're going to unscrew each of these points, and then that board will just lift right out. I've already removed the preamp tubes from the other side, so I'll show you what the other side of that board looks like once it's out. Okay, so preamp board is out. No major surprises here. I am going to replace these capacitors. And then also, it looks like these two film caps were replaced. These look like Mallory's, unless I'm mistaken. And then you can see, so I'll go ahead and replace this guy too. But man, you can see the difference between these two metal oxide resistors. So this is probably a new one that got replaced at some point, or has just seen way, way less heat over the course of its life. Whereas these guys are just like barely holding on. They're probably fine. Usually these metal oxides are good until they fail. They're made to handle extreme heat and hold their resistance at those higher temperatures. But just since I'm going to be in here anyway, I am going to replace all those metal oxides with new ones. And I'll probably replace them with like 3-watt resistors that'll have slightly larger legs, and then I can stand them off the board a little more like how these guys are done. That way they'll have heat dissipation all the way around the resistor instead of being right up against the board and just heating up all the time. So I'm going to take note of these capacitor values, these resistor values, probably replace this capacitor since I'll be in here anyway. Same with this resistor. And then I'll pull maybe the power tube board next, and then the power board. One last note on our preamp board, I'm seeing why these jumpers are in place. It looks like the traces were cut here, and then also across here at some point. I'm not sure if that was done intentionally or what. Or somebody just, yeah, slipped with a screwdriver across there. But that's what's going on there. So I'll double check those connections and clean it up if needed, but maybe that's okay. Okay, so through the power of movie magic, we are back instantly, despite the fact that was a very frustrating, probably 20 minutes to get this out. The screws, you remove this board by removing the screws for the tube retainers on the other side of the chassis. The fun thing is that the last person to do this didn't use like lock washers or anything, so those screws were just free spinning in there. Especially the last one was actually misthreaded, so I had to pull the preamp board just to get a wrench on the other side to hold it in place because it was stuck essentially, and then only to find out there's no traces on this side of the board. So good learning lesson. I may come up with a better solution for attaching let's see, I guess attaching this board in place, since the only thing you would need to pull this for, I guess, are either of those diodes, resistors, or the tube sockets, which shouldn't need to be done anytime soon, but if they did, man, that was quite a hassle to get this out. The other fun thing, we've got a lifted trace on that leg of the resistor, so I'm going to figure out a better way to attach that. Might even end up putting a small turret in there or something, but we'll see. Good times. Starting to feel like I bought a car once that when I started to work on it, realized the last owner had rounded out all the bolts for things like the oil drain pan and the lug nuts, and starting to wonder if he also owned this VTM60. Maybe that was Sam Jackson, but we'll find out. I'll pull this next board over here next. Hopefully it's a little quicker. No major surprises on the underside of the power board, although we can confirm that bias, variable fixed bias that was installed, is going over to under this gunk. Let's see if we can zoom in. So you can see right in there, there's a heat shrinked resistor underneath there, which is our current limiting resistor, or way of having a minimum. So if you were to set this pot to a minimum value, you want to just short everything out. So they at least did that part good. And then that's going over here to, sorry, we'll get in focus here, to that resistor right next to the black cap. I'm really tempted to just put this back to stock. I don't know. I've added variable fixed bias to a couple 5150s in the past at customer request. It's just, these amps are made to be cold biased. This one less so than a 5150, but I might leave it in and just set it to what would be stock and know that that's how it should be. Or I may just remove that completely. It looks like the choke is in fact just going to these two wires, replacing the 10 watt resistor that would have been in there. I think it's a 470 ohm 10 watt. I could be wrong about that. Everything else looks okay. So I'm going to put together a parts order, and yeah. And then once things show up, we'll dive into this and yeah, have some fun. Really looking forward to playing this VTM60, but I'll walk you through the repair on both these amps as well. This one will be a little more involved than I thought it was going to be. The 5150 should be pretty straightforward, so we'll just include those on one video together. All right, one more quick note here, since I can never help myself after already saying, hope you guys have a good night, but I think we're maybe not going to put this board back in. I think I am going to, I already have to order some tube sockets for my high watt. I'm going to get a couple more for mounting in the chassis holes there. All we really have to accommodate for is our screen resistors, what I think are the grid resistors, those diodes. The rest of the stuff is, normal power tube stuff. So it might take getting a little creative with how we implement connecting to this guy. Yeah, I'm going to double check the schematic, see if there's any reason to keep this board in other than just having it be easier with the connectors that are there. But I would much rather have a amp that has just normal tube sockets mounted to the chassis and having their connections go to directly to those sockets from the rest of the amp. I'll obviously keep the board for, if I ever do sell this thing, but I have a feeling I'm going to hold on to this for a long time. I know I've said in the past, I'm not a huge fan of modifications on amplifiers. This thing's already been modified to the point it has holes drilled in the chassis. It's obviously not going to be a collector's piece. I would hold on to all the parts and do what are functional upgrades for the reliability of the amp. In this case, is how I'm going to justify that. So let me know what you think. I don't know if I've ever seen anyone do that on one of these Peaveys, but kind of seems like a good idea to me. I will keep these other two circuit boards as is, but just this guy, the power tube board, just get rid of it, hand solder that stuff, hand wire it, and move forward with my life, having a really great loud amplifier and playing some Swedish death metal. Okay, thanks again for watching, and hope you guys have a good night.